of June 763 BC, a total eclipse crossed the capital city of Nineveh, an event so precisely dated by modern astronomers that it still anchors the entire chronology of the Assyrian Empire today. Assyrian priests didn't read a total eclipse as a spectacle, they read it as a death sentence, specifically the kings. So the empire built itself an escape hatch. The moment the omens turned dark, a substitute was found. A criminal, a war prisoner, or once, according to the record, a gardener, dressed in royal robes and seated on the actual throne. He ruled in the king's place for up to 100 days, absorbing whatever fate the sky had ordered, while the real king hid out as a private citizen. One documented case, under King Esarhaddon around 670 BC, ended with a substitute named Damchi executed alongside a woman installed as his queen. The whole system ran on one hard rule: better a stranger dies than a king does. Then the real king walked back into his own palace, and the empire kept moving. 3,000 years later, biologist Adam Hartstone Rose tried measuring that same instinct, minus the mythology attached to it. During the 2017 total eclipse over Columbia, South Carolina, his team at North Carolina State University tracked 17 species at Riverbanks Zoo as totality swept overhead. Roughly 3/4 of the animals reacted as though real night had fallen. Giraffes broke into a stampede. Galapagos tortoises, usually motionless for hours at a stretch, started mating. Gibbons let out calls researchers had never once recorded from them in daylight. Flamingos huddled into the tight cluster zookeepers only ever see at dusk. Nothing about the physical world had actually changed. No predator, no temperature crisis, no real threat anywhere nearby. The light simply vanished for about 2 minutes, and animals that shrug off a passing rain cloud completely lost the plot. Whatever ancient humans felt standing under a disappearing sun, you'd have felt it too. It's wired into nearly every species with eyes, yours included. Everyone assumes eclipse panic stayed pure superstition forever. It didn't. Babylonian priest astronomers, logging eclipses on clay tablets for well over a century, eventually noticed the sky kept repeating itself on a schedule. Every 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. Modern astronomers still call it the Saros cycle. Centuries before Greek philosophers ever touched the idea, Babylonian scribes were already forecasting roughly when the next eclipse would fall, without understanding why the moon did what it did. Terror and mathematics, it turns out, were never mutually exclusive. So who actually wrote any of this down first? One candidate sits on the Syrian coast. A clay tablet unearthed at the ancient city of Ugarit in 1948 was reanalyzed in 1989 by astronomers Teji de Jong and Wilfred van Solt. Using the tablet's mention of Mars being visible in a darkened daytime sky, they dated the recorded event to the 5th of March 1223 BC, a solar eclipse pressed into clay 32 centuries before anyone built an instrument capable of checking their math. Not every historian agrees the tablet even describes an eclipse. Some read the same lines as ritual language, nothing astronomical at all, and the debate hasn't fully settled. Either way, someone in the late Bronze Age thought a darkened sky was worth scratching into something built to outlast them by 3,000 years. It did, but was fear really the only option on the table? Among the Bata Mariba people, whose homeland along the Togo-Benin border was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2004, cultural astronomer Jarita Holbrook has documented a solar eclipse tradition running in the opposite direction entirely. In their oral tradition, an eclipse means the sun and the moon are fighting, and it becomes the community's job to make peace first. Old feuds get settled, arguments people had been nursing for years get dropped. On the spot, inside the same few minutes other civilizations spent building decoy kings or scanning the sky for omens of doom. Same darkened sun, same missing light, completely opposite instructions for what a human being was supposed to do standing underneath it. Everyone assumes an eclipse could only ever make things worse. Once, in recorded history, it ended a war outright. On the 28th of May, 585 BC, the Lydians and the Medes were in their 6th year of fighting near the Halys River, in what's now Turkey, when the afternoon sky went dark for just over 6 minutes. Both armies stopped mid-battle and signed a peace treaty within days. Greek tradition credits the philosopher Thales of Miletus with predicting the exact date, a claim most historians still doubt, since the math required was centuries beyond what anyone in that era actually had. So what did ancient humans actually do when the sun disappeared? Executed decoy kings, panicked exactly like a giraffe or a tortoise, cracked the math 3 centuries early, carved the moment into clay meant to outlast them, ended a war in an afternoon, sat down with an old enemy and called it even. None of that reads like one species giving one answer to one sky. The obvious response is fear, and fear is real. In the bloodstream, in the seized-up throat, in every species that's ever looked up at a wrong sun. But the deeper answer is that an eclipse never actually asked humans a question about astronomy. It asked them what they already believed about power, about each other, about whether an old grudge was worth keeping, once the sky reminded everyone how small the argument really was. You're still standing in that open field, 3,000 years ago, and the black circle in the sky has already started to thin at one edge. In a few minutes, the temperature will climb back up, the birds will remember how to sing, and the sun will do exactly what it always does, which is come back. Today, you'd have known that part in advance. An app, a countdown, a folding chair, and a pair of glasses ordered ahead of time. What you wouldn't have is the 3 minutes in the dark with nothing to do but decide, right then, who you actually were. The sun always came back. What almost never changes is what people do with the darkness in between.